Right then, welcome back to the channel. My name is Howson, and this is a video that I have been absolutely desperate to do. We've been looking at Ajax for a long time. We've been looking at Ten Hag for a long time. And I think we're ready to now sort of go through and really fully explain Ten Hag's tactics and why I want him to be the Manchester United boss. So this Ajax side and Ten Hag really came to prominence in the 2018-19 season, where Ajax managed to get very far in the Champions League, and they returned to glory on the domestic front under Ten Hag. Now, most of that team has since departed, and that for me is one of the really, really important things about Ten Hag. He's maintained an unreal level of success in a team that hadn't won for 4 or 5 years prior to him coming, whilst his team has been completely rebuilt. Now, I think that's harder in the Premier League, of course, but he's demonstrated more than most managers that are out there that he can rebuild a team that's been taken apart and keep it winning and keep it successful. Champions League campaign came to a premature end for them this season after some really good results in the group stage. They operated under, or he operated on, in a 4-2-3-1 when he was at Utrecht, and even in his early days at Ajax. The constant carousel of departures have either forced his hand, or we've seen the true Ten Hag as he's adapted the system. He's settled with more of a 4-3-3 and was reunited with Haller in January 2021 on his arrival from West Ham, who slotted into that centre-forward slot, which he previously occupied Utrecht under Ten Hag. Ajax play what most people would consider a 4-3-3. And when they're attacking, it actually starts to look a little bit more like a 4-2-3-1 in practice. The central midfielder of the three is more likely to join the attack or maintain a higher position, being a bit of a pivot in front of the defence. A little bit like what you've seen with United, but it's really the key of the other two players in that midfield three, which I find fascinating. It reminds me a little bit of what we saw under Ole at United, which was successful when it was Matic, Herrera and Pogba. Pogba's not really a 10. He's an attacking midfielder. He's a creative midfielder. But he was kind of played in the more advanced of the three role. You had Ander Herrera in the 8 and you had Matic in the 6. Donny van der Beek actually held a little bit of that responsibility as the 10 during his time at Ajax. Since he moved to United, that's fallen to David Klaassen or Steve Burgess. On the other side, the two players that are more defensively minded, the two men that have the more greater responsibilities in defence in that old United system where you would have had Herrera and Matic. I like what they offer in this system. The right central midfielder is typically more your box-to-box player. That would be the Ander Herrera kind of role. Previously, Lars Sean or Edson Alvarez, if not playing further ahead. While the left central midfielder has been the one that's had a bit more class possession and a lot more defence-minded. First, Frankie de Jong, and lately it's been Ryan Gravenberch. That was the Matic kind of role under Ole at United. So that's what that 4-3-3 kind of resembles. 3 asymmetrical players with 3 very clearly defined roles blended together to get the best out of a midfield 3. I like that. Very much in the 6-8-10 role, and probably why a lot of people want to classify Ajax's formation as 4-3-3. In reality, I think it is more of a 4-2-3-1. But I'm not going to get too precious about that. I think there's a lot of flexibility and fluidity in it. Something interesting to note on the 4-3-3 and on the style and the build-up kind of stuff is that Ten Hag was actually under Pep Guardiola for a couple of years, 2013, 2015, under the tutelage of Pep Guardiola while he was the head coach at Bayern. And in his style of play, you can see that he's drawn quite a lot of inspiration from his time at Bayern under Pep. In build-up, when playing out, Ajax utilise a ring of security. The centre-backs and the goalkeeper, and one or both of the full-backs will drop in, and they start to establish dominance against an opposition block, pretty much by using quick one-touch play on the floor, as you would just close your eyes and imagine Pep Guardiola to do. One of the fullbacks, very often Daily Blind, drops deeper and a bit more narrow to add a little bit of extra protection to that ring. And that's conducive to either fullback becoming deep as a playmaker, as you see in Pep Guardiola's system, so they have time and space to find vertical options either side of the pitch. Ajax frequently stagger their midfielders too, and that's another feature of the 6-8-10 kind of principle. They're not flat and square. They have angles off them. The single pivot acts as the anchor, obviously holds up the opponent's front line. He goes in more narrower. Again, that's very much how you see Pep using Rodri. And then once they start moving it through the thirds, they're looking to open passing lanes. They're looking to try and create time and space on the ball. They're looking to receive the ball in optimal positions, in optimal foot positions, with optimal passing options from them off that. They look to move through the middle third with minimal of fuss. There will be a bit of time building up at the back, but once they decide they're penetrating, they don't go direct. They'll still move it along the floor, but it's minimal fuss, minimal kind of. There's almost like, no one's taking passes and touches for the sake of it. In the final third, another crucial element to their ability to combine is positional rotation, movement off the ball. And this is something that this United side, since Louis, really, has really struggled with. The movement off the ball got better under Ole. I think it's probably stagnated a little bit under Ralph. But those positional rotations, almost just moving for the sake of it, to just reoccupy a different space, is needed. And it's something that I think United have lacked. But Ajax do it really well. They use the width. The width is maintained by the fullbacks, and that allows the wingers to then drift inside, invert, create a little bit of havoc. Ziyech, when he was there, was known as a bit of a master of that during his time at Ajax. Tadic has also filled that void now with a real good reputation, coming inside and creating from the central areas. And that means that the movement of the wingers and outside central midfielders is very fluid, constantly rotating, constantly creating chaos for the opposition, being very, very difficult to mark. Right now, Anthony provides a bit more of a width in the team, but it's movement that is what's making him so deadly. And that's how they create chances. Defensively, something United definitely need to be thinking about and looking at. Apart from in 18-19 when they were second, Ajax have topped the intensity stats in each of Ten Hag's campaigns. That indicates a clear defensive approach based on really aggressive pressing, tackling, and intercepting whenever the opposition have the ball. I would call it proactive rather than passive defending. Passive defending, sometimes termed low block, something you might associate with Jose, looking to defend structurally rather than dealing with the ball aggressively, trying to maintain very tight, rigid distances, not allowing teams to pass through, and working together as a unit quite passively. The opposite of that is effectively pressing the ball hard. Now, I thought the Barcelona team under Pep pressed the ball very well, and the Bayern Munich team pressed the ball very well. This Manchester City team, I think they're a lot more passive than those other two teams, but they still press at times. I think they also mark space really well, which negates the need to press so well. They play such a high line, they basically just come and live right on top of you in your half. Ajax are a little bit different. They'll start a little bit deeper, but they will press aggressively. They will look to intercept aggressively. They're very, very proactive in terms of getting after the ball. And I think from a fan base, you really want to see that. The low block defense isn't something that a fan base can get amongst. Like, it isn't something that a fan base is going to cheer. It isn't something where you're excited about how you defend. But winning the ball high gets the crowd on its feet. Someone smashing someone gets the crowd on its feet. Aggressively chasing after the ball, a la Tevez, gets the crowd on its feet. And I think that can really build momentum in a game for when you do win the ball back and then aggressively try and counter with the ball. From a 4-2-3-1 defensive structure, as we said, that number 8 comes and joins the number 6 alongside him. The number 10 occupies a central position. Also very adept at flipping to a 4-4-2, which is an extremely good defensive structure, just by allowing the number 9 to come and sit alongside the number 10, and your wingers fall in like right and left midfielders. Narrow positioning inside the channels. They allow pressure in the wide areas, especially when the opposition centre-backs split during the build-up. They like the centre forward to drop slightly. He looks to maybe screen the number 6 pass, because that's a lot of teams that they're going to try and play out through 3 players. They're either going to go over your head, or they're going to go to the fullbacks, or they're going to go to the 6. So your striker coming in and covering the 6, or the number 10 and the striker sort of completely blocking off the number 6. One looking to block the passing lane, one maybe to get tight to him. The 6 often is the playmaker. You stop him playing, you're going to stop a lot of teams, or you're going to reduce their effectiveness in playing out from the final third. The number 10 also drops back, allowing a bit of a double pivot to support wider and pressing, which means one of the number 8s can come up and he can go to the left or the right hand side, and then it can look a little bit more like a 3 in midfield, supporting the wide players as they go wide, looking to support those inside balls into the half space and prevent balls coming back on the inside. It's just about movement, flexibility, communication. When the centre forward presses higher, the wingers cover the wide areas. That double pivot look to press and squeeze in the midfield area a lot more tightly as well. And that's where they've had a lot of success, this Ajax side, Ryan Gravenberch being a massive standout in doing that. More recently, as they've ended up more of a 4-3-3, the defence has had a slightly different approach. The central striker, usually Haller, stays high rather than dropping in to cover the 6. He looks to sort of get amongst the centre-halves. The wingers look to trap opposing runs into wide areas, usually the fullbacks, especially if the fullback is aggressively pressed. The number 8s look to cover those inside channels, preventing a little bit of a screen, and then they will have the 6 drop off a little bit further back, looking to maybe pick up the opposition number 10 or balls that are looking to try and get into Ajax's final third. Wingers do support coming backwards, and the central midfield focus more on the areas in front of the 2 centre-halves, giving us some serious strength and rigidity to the middle of their structure. It's also a very high line, which is something that Harry Maguire is going to struggle with. Ten Hag seemingly alters between the 2 formations, and even though people that might watch Ajax more than I do might say it's definitely this formation or it's definitely that, it's probably more the fact that it's very fluid and there's not a lot between those 2 formations. It's literally just the movement of 2 players changes this whole makeup. Both formations are really similar, but it's just that there's no real formational description for that. So it's a combination of 4-3-3 and 4-2-3-1. Pressure on the ball then. So the common theme about Ten Hag's defensive approach is individuals pressing, and they come and press out of the line. Whether that's a centre-back pushes out to deal with a dropping attacker, a number 8 pushes out to deal with maybe someone in a pivot. Ten Hag wants his players to work, even if it means aggressively leaving defensive lines. The killer about this is that you really have to have a lot of pace to cover in behind, and you really have to have a lot of communication to be able to cover in behind for that. The principles are the same. It's always got to be +1 in defence. But can you cover aggressively like that when you've got players that are either prone to missing tackles or not quick enough to recover? I don't think you can. They try and set up in a bit of a medium block where they'll press and they look to try and keep the opposition away from goal at all costs. It's a good tactic and it's pretty straightforward to implement, but it requires certain attributes and abilities in the players that I'm not 100% sure exist in the current Manchester United setup. That's a little bit of an explainer on how Ajax line up, how they play, and I think you can see why Ralf Rangnick's at Manchester United. I think you can see the progression of what Ralf's tried to implement to Ten Hag, and I think you could understand with the right signings how he could make this effective at Manchester United. But there has to be a big buy-in from the players. And that might be what he struggles with. I've identified 14 players that I think could easily be moved on from the club. I just don't think it's realistic to make it happen in one summer. I think Ten Hag's a very, very, very good manager. I think given the right backing and structure around him, I think he could do bits for Manchester United. That's how he lines up. We'll do some more videos looking into how he might shape Manchester United and potential signings as the appointment becomes clearer and it gets closer to the time. Because I think it's probably going to be a big flurry of activity right now. It's probably going to go quiet for 6 or 8 weeks and then be announced. But anyway, that's what I'm thinking. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and I'll see you in the next one. Laters. Hey, thank you for watching the video. If you are new around these parts, then don't forget to subscribe. My channel is proudly supported by my community on Patreon. If you'd like to get a little bit of extra content, a Discord group, meetups, 5-a-side games, weekly podcasts, behind the scenes, and even an occasional bit of transfer news as and when I get it, then for the price of a pint, you can show your appreciation for the content that we make and get some goodies for doing so as well. Check the link in the description or click the button right here. You'll also find all of my socials here too if you want to follow me on any of those platforms. Nice one.